Well, Charles, as you know, we're here in Acapulco for the Anarchapulco 2019 conference, and unfortunately, it's precluded my ability to be with you there in New York. I really appreciate your flexibility, but we're going to be bringing the audience Sunday with Charlie. Charles, how are you there in New York?
I'm doing well. Weather's fine. Doing a lot of research. Glad that you are enjoying yourselves down there in Mexico.
Absolutely. And you know, of course, Charlie Robinson is the author of The Octopus of Global Control, a book that contains several quotes from the great Charles Ortel. And I'm so pleased to be able to bring you guys together to have some words before we begin today's show.
Great. I'd love to hear more about your book, Charlie.
Well, of course you would, because it's got your words in it. It's fantastic. Nobody quite sums up the Clinton Foundation like you. So I had to, the format of the book is that I brought in quotes from over 500 people that had some role or some opinion on the important events that have shaped the world. And when it got to the Clinton Foundation, honestly, who better than you and your work? So if it's okay, I'd like to read a little bit from what I put. This is a quote from you. It says, "The Clinton Foundation has been part of an international charity fraud network whose entire cumulative scale, counting inflows and outflows, approaches and may even exceed 100 billion measured from 1997 onward." And so, you know, I went on to document that, you know, the Clinton Foundation's IRS documents showed that of the 500 million it raised over a 4-year period starting in 2009, only 15% was actually spent on programmatic grants. So what did they spend the remaining 85% on? Well, for over 4 years, they spent 8 million per year on travel expenses. Did they take the space shuttle for these trips? And then followed up with the second quote is from Charles is, "When you look at who were the principal contributors and trustees, there's a surprising number of convicted felons who are accused of illegal activity on a massive scale. It's amazing. This is another example of a purported charity being used, in my view, to enrich the principles associated with it." Charles Ortel. So, you know, I go on to say, however, the Clinton Foundation has needs that must be addressed before they get down to the business of actual charity. For instance, the foundation spent a total of 110 million over those 4 years on salaries. Who did they hire to work at this charitable organization? Alex Rodriguez and LeBron James? They also earned 290 million for, quote, or earmarked 290 million for, quote, other expenses, which we assume means blowjobs if Bill had any say in the matter.
Is that a quote from Charles?
No, that's a quote from me.
Okay, there we go. What do you think, Charles?
Well, I think, I don't know when has this book been published already?
Yes.
It came out the tail end of 2017.
I see, okay, great. I haven't read it yet, so I'd love to do that.
I'll make sure you get a copy.
Thank you. So the issue with the Clinton Foundation that Jason and I have been teasing out is that, you know, what do we really mean by that? What the big game with the Clinton Foundation, in my view, is that they adopt a theory that they're engaged in charitable activities, but they do so via multiple hard-to-trace vehicles. Whether there's, you know, simple as just press releases going out, send money to an address, send money via the internet to this domain or another domain. So to track down exactly how much money has been solicited, how much money has been raised, by how many different entities that purport to be part of the Clinton Foundation charity network is a massive exercise that I've been working on for 4 years. So you're right to point on those 4 years you're looking at. Clinton Foundation, or looked at, began October 23, 1997. There are multiple spin-outs from it. There are multiple allied groups. And I think the total amount of money that I see the Clintons declaring as having been raised inside the core entities is about 3.3 billion. But when you add on top of that the Global Fund, Unitaid, you know, a whole bunch of other related entities, you very quickly get into the 100 billion. And when you then think about the ways in which the Clintons and their allies around the world tap into the World Bank and the IMF and various international aid organizations to pursue mammoth projects that nobody checks what's really going on. I think this really is a travesty, and we've got to stop honoring the Clintons for their supposed good works and instead demand rigorous accounting, particularly of their foundation, but particularly of all these multilateral organizations that Bill Gates wants us to support. They have high-sounding goals, but what they do is quite another thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Charles, there's a lot of people who have seen me here at the conference who have asked if you're here. I know you get your daily dose of anarchy over at Starbucks, but perhaps 2020, maybe you'll join the conference here and give a speech. I know, perhaps if the wall is built by then, maybe you could get Mexico to pay for the trip.
I'll just go through the back door. Next year I'd be interested in doing that. That sounds like a great idea.
Wow, great. I did not know how you'd react. I think people will look forward to seeing you at Anarchapulco. I know you're very busy with research, Charles, and thank you for joining us briefly on the call. I didn't want people to miss the daily show here on Sunday, or I should say the weekend show, and let everybody know that you and I will be back closing in on Wednesday.
Very good. Enjoy yourselves, gentlemen, and thanks so much for having me on the call.
Thank you very much. Take care, Charles.
Bye-bye.
And there we go, Charles Ortel, the great one, as it were.
What yellow vest?
Exactly, what yellow vest. Well, Charlie, I'm so pleased to be here with you in person. We've done several interviews now, and we're getting to know each other face to face. It's been a pleasure. The book is amazing, The Octopus of Global Control. Just remind everybody, if you would, where they can get that book.
You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at barnesandnoble.com, and you can get it on my website, theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com. And I took quotes from 500 different people, over 500 different people that had a role in this, the major events that we've seen in over our 100 years. Well, even beyond that, but mostly, within the last 100 years when this octopus has started to, come out of the depths of the ocean and strangle our society. And it goes back to the concept of the octopus is certainly not mine, but actually goes back to New York City, 1922. The first record that I found of it was John Francis Hyland, former mayor of New York City, talking about the Rockefeller Standard Oil octopus that has spread its tentacles throughout the city. It's captured the state houses and the media and the politicians and the judges and the banks and everything like that. And it's a perfect metaphor for this because the octopus is intelligent, devious, and vicious, and it will change colors, change textures, it will spray ink everywhere so that it can make its disappearance. It'll blend into the background so nobody can see it. If you get too close, it'll rip you apart with its beak that's hidden. It's flexible enough that if it can get its eyeball through a hole, then it can fit its entire body through a hole. You can see these crazy videos of octopus getting out of tanks, going across the floor, getting into another tank, grabbing a fish, eating it, crawling back, getting into its own tank. And I think, well, that's kind of like these maniacs that are running the world.
Wow.
Devious, willing to do anything, no threat of any repercussion, smart, flexible.
No limits.
No limits. No limits. No limits to their goal. They get single-minded in what they want. If they want that fish, they got to get out of one tank, get in the other tank to get it. They'll do it.
How does it even know the fish is there?
I don't know. Maybe it can just see it.
Wow.
Maybe it can feel it. Maybe it's got extrasensory perception where it can feel, it can smell it.
Got to be a lot about the octopus that isn't known.
I learned more about that animal than I ever thought I would. But it's such a great symbol. And here we are at Anarchapulco. We're talking about all the things that are either wrong or aspects of our government that we're not just the United States government, but government in particular, that we have problems with. We have real problems. This event has been fantastic. This is the 5th year, I think, of it.
Wow.
And
it's huge this year.
Every year, it's doubled in size.
Have you been here before?
Never been here before, but I spoke on the first day, and it's like when you take your finals you get done with your finals, and then you can enjoy summer vacation. I felt like when gave my talk, then I was done, and I could go check out everybody else. We saw David Icke, we saw Ron Paul last night. We saw Ron Paul at dinner last night, which was fantastic. But it's the Super Bowl of the alternative media.
You're right.
Everybody's here. It's that week leading up to the Super Bowl where everybody's having, you go from party to party and meet and greets and all that stuff. So we got, it's just been a lot of fun. Not to mention, you can learn quite a bit, and it isn't just anti-government related. There's also aspects of it for your family. So there's lots of kids here too. I was a little bit surprised by that. Families with their kids. The kids can go to these family camps where they can work on things like that. There's unschooling workshops. There's you can listen to Mark Devlin. I caught his talk with Ole yesterday.
He's great.
He's fantastic. Yeah, and he talks about the the nature of Hollywood and the music industry, and how these actors and how these musicians tend to appear to come out of nowhere, and they just they just did a really good job in acting class and got a role and networked and all this stuff happened, and then you find out that they're all cousins of one another and they're all interrelated.
Military ties.
It is really scary. Military ties, yes. He talked about Jim Morrison being this, everybody knows him from The Doors, and he was he was working at film school at UCLA, and he was very anti-war. But then his dad was an admiral in the U.S. Navy who was directly involved in the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Wow.
So this juxtaposition of people, and they're dividing the culture, and pro-war, anti-war. It just gets back into that divide and conquer philosophy that they love so much. It's so effective. So they cut you down the middle.
And you're touching on this, but of course we've met some people who are heroes of this kind of a book, right?
Yeah.
You've got who have you been running into that would you say is the most, other than Ron Paul? There have been a lot of people. David Icke
was amazing. We saw. Let's see. I was.
G.
Edward Griffin.
Yeah.
He wrote the book The Creature from Jekyll Island about the Federal Reserve Bank. I had a layover with him in Mexico City. We chatted about everything. I said, I'm here to see you. I'm here to see you speak. His response was, I'm sorry to hear that. I feel sorry for you. This is a guy that knows. This is a guy that got me. Obviously, he's in the book, but he got me. He got me interested, and he got me to understand the secretive nature of the way the banking institutions work, and how they all got on this train and took the train in secret to Jekyll Island, Georgia, where they plotted to put together the Federal Reserve Act, and how they got Woodrow Wilson involved to pass that into law, and then there's quotes from Woodrow Wilson in the book as well, saying, I feel that I have condemned my country, I have sold my country out inadvertently. I don't think it was inadvertent. I think he knows he sold his country out, but I don't think it was inadvertent.
Maybe they forced him to.
There's blackmail involved, maybe not in his case, but that is definitely a control mechanism that we see. I definitely rail against the mainstream media, and so who do we get to see here? We get to see Ben Swann.
Yeah, he was great.
He's fantastic. One of the guys that worked in the mainstream media, and he's very upfront about how he got started and why he got started.
Yeah.
He got started in the mainstream media because he had 2 young daughters, and he needed a job, and he needed to make money.
Right.
And we all feel that. We all have these sort of issues. So he goes down that path, and he's reporting on a bunch of useless stuff, and then he gets the opportunity to do Reality Check, which is a fantastic segment. And he went down that path, and he took it just a little bit too far with the Pizzagate stuff. And
well, he's a rare breed, though. He was a guy for which the truth was more important than the salary. He took a huge risk, breaking away. Interestingly enough, a CBS affiliate, and it was Cheryl Atkinson, who was also at CBS, who had to leave. So we see how these sort of things.
And you had her on not too long ago.
I've spoken to Cheryl a number of times.
Many times. She's
there
amazing.
are still people there.
She's in
the
there
mainstream.
She's in the book, of course, because she's telling the truth,
right?
And she's challenging this, and you see what happens when you challenge the narrative. They silence you. They crush you.
They try.
They kill you in some cases. Yeah. It's very real. This is not a joke, and so you wonder, well, who is making the decisions here? Is it really, is this just a jerky boss that's trying to make your life difficult, or is it coming from above them? And my research shows that it is coming from above them. It's coming from the Council on Foreign Relations meetings. It's coming from the Bilderberg meetings. It's coming from the, from Davos. It's coming from these places. And this is, I started my speech off as describing Anarchapulco as Bilderberg for the good guys, or Davos with tacos. Pretty much.
Davos with tacos.
It's this group of people that are free thinkers, and there's people walking around smoking pot, and that's fine, whatever. But there are a lot of people in cryptocurrency. There's a lot of people talking about, hey, we've got some problems here. How can we fix them? We're smart. We could, if we put our heads together. We're coming from a place of wanting to fix things, want to make things better. We're not looking to suppress people. We're not looking to crush information. We're looking to get all this information out there, and let's decide if it means something to us. And if it does, that's great. And if it doesn't, well, that's okay. That might be for somebody else to focus on. So it's been fantastic to be here because you're around a lot of people that are like-minded. It's not to say that everybody thinks exactly the same, and that, of course, isn't the point, but it is to break out of this paradigm of control through the media, control through the education system. I get into this in the book and talk about a guy named John Taylor Gatto. He was an older guy who had been involved in the education system for years and years and years. And I think he died recently, a couple years ago, but he talks about how the concept of schooling, how you sit in a classroom, it's something that we never even really think about and I never thought about it until I heard him say, the rows that you go to in your classroom and all the desks are in straight lines, and when the class is over, the bell rings and then everyone gets up and goes. Well, that was put into place by the Rockefeller Foundation. And the reason why they did that was to train the kids early on for a lifetime of moving from the school into the factories. They want you to get used to being in these straight lines. They want you to hear the bell and then slide off the back of the brontosaurus and fly out like Fred Flintstone. They want you to be conditioned to that early on. And there's this education about behavior modification through that, but then there's also the lack of education through omission, whereas you never understand. They never teach you about how the banking system works,
right?
Because they don't want you to know how the banking system works. Because the minute you understand that, then the next step is to realize it's a scam.
Right.
And they can't have that. So it's not just the education that you get; it's also the education that you do not get, and it's a bit to break free. And I think a lot of people are comfortable in their prison because it's the prison that they know. And to the idea of, they talk about actual prisoners that spend 40 years in jail becoming institutionalized. When they open the doors and let them out, they don't want to go sometimes.
They don't know what to do.
They don't know what to do. They don't know how to behave. They're terrified of what that freedom might look like. And I think for us, a lot of us, we are in emotional and mental prisons. And so sometimes, when the door is opened for us, some of us don't want to walk out either because the idea is it's a bit overwhelming and daunting.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah. I didn't come up with it, but it's it's from reading people like John Taylor Gatto and from people that had that talk about the private prison industry and the public prison industry, and it's conditioning, and they put you in these cages and they keep you there physically, but they're also keeping you there mentally as well. So people come out of these systems totally screwed up, and so part of this conference is helping to deprogram people, and the deprogramming is painful and it's tough, and some people are ready for it and some people aren't, and people have told me, oh, you're going to Anarchapulco, what are you guys going to throw Molotov cocktails and wear black bandanas and Antifa stuff? Like it's not that. There's none of that going on.
Well, talk about that for a second. What would you, for people who don't know what Anarchapulco is, how would you describe anarchy?
So anarchy is defined as, it is not defined as no rules. It is defined as no rulers. So and that's a big difference. The people that are down here are not running around like maniacs. They're just not allowing other people to tell them what they can and can't do. They are in charge of their own behavior. They're in charge of their own actions. So they will they understand there are consequences for your behavior and actions. But they don't like that the state has to tell them what the consequences are. They feel it themselves. I'm not going to hurt somebody else, because to hurt somebody else is not a nice thing to do. I'm not going to go out there and tell somebody to, it's not to say that stealing is okay, or anyone can just come in your room. It's not like they took the locks off the doors and things like that. But it's just that you're not getting caught up in this whole, so just because something is illegal doesn't mean it's wrong.
Right.
Yeah, and
Well,
so
but
they
at the
want to
same
make
time-
that distinction.
And at the same time, it's a little bit of there are some incongruencies, because we were in the same restaurant last night where we didn't realize this, but the Ron Paul dinner was going on.
Right.
We didn't pay the extra fee to attend the Ron
Yes.
Paul dinner, so that was a very organized, we're not really allowed into it kind of a thing that flies in the face of this anarchy
Yes.
idea a little bit. And really, the bigger sort of what's the word I'm looking for? But we're talking about the Fed, and we're talking about this one world government and wanting to avoid that.
Yeah.
We've heard for so long that it's a move towards a one world currency where we've seen friends like Laura Loomer being blocked from PayPal. I mean, in my view, this is already happening. Laura's ability to earn money and spend money is dramatically impacted by that decision to be barred from PayPal. Now, she didn't go to court. She wasn't sentenced to a crime. They just decided they didn't like her and switched that off. So we should touch on the fact that another major component of this conference is this whole cryptocurrency idea.
Yes.
And so how do they reconcile this move towards cryptocurrency? We don't know who created Bitcoin, which is the largest one. We've got all these sort of questionable entities controlling the exchanges where you get into the cryptocurrency. How do people reconcile all this,
Yeah,
Charlie?
I think that, it's something that I'm getting an education on as well. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on cryptocurrencies. I'm interested in it, but I do understand that there's a bit of a conflict there, because on the one hand, you want to get away from the Federal Reserve notes. You want to get away from the Fed and the central banks, the Bank for International Settlements controlling all of this. We understand that they're, of all the tentacles of the octopus, I put the banking as the most dangerous. So you want to get away from that. So you get into something that's a digital currency like Bitcoin, but you also have to be aware that could actually be one step closer to making it easier to centralize control of the money, because it's digital. Because you've got Mt. Gox years ago that just disappeared overnight. You've got this guy recently, within the last couple of weeks, with $180 million of Bitcoin on his exchange that died, allegedly, and didn't leave the key to somebody. So what does everybody say? Everybody says that guy must have faked his own death, or maybe his wife has the key, or maybe his wife whacked him. I'm just speculating, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean? But there's a lot of possibilities that where something shady could have gone. And part of that is because when you're talking about that much money, people will do some things that they might not normally do. If you're going to leave $1.80 laying around somewhere, someone might not steal it. If you're going to leave $180 million sitting around somewhere,
more people that would be motivated to steal it.
Maybe that's enough to get you to do something immoral like that. So the crypto is a concept that it's early. It's early on. It's getting worked out. There's a lot of very smart people here. There's a lot of people that are probably scamming. I mean, there's a component of that. There has to be. I wouldn't be so naive to think that everybody involved in the cryptocurrency is on the up and up. There's definitely going to be some shady individuals that get involved in that, for all the reasons that shady individuals get involved with banking. Because why do you rob a bank? Because that's where the money is. Why do you rob a crypto marketplace? Because that's where the crypto is. So there will be that for sure. And when that happens, and when these things blow up, the media that pretends like cryptocurrency doesn't exist will then jump on board and say, look at this scam, we told you. And that's because they're doing the bidding of the people above them that want them to, to marginalize anything that isn't conforming to the traditional banking paradigm that we live in. So we talked about that, how you got to pay extra to go to the Ron Paul dinner, and that is straight up capitalism,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yet we're at an anarchy event that is not necessarily in alignment with pure capitalism. So it needs to be worked out. And much like the crypto, I think that Anarchapulco is a work in progress. It's a couple, 5 years, fifth year of this event, so it's getting worked out. Some of these things, it may be that we stop seeing those. It also is a business. It also
Right.
costs a lot of money to put this on. You can have
Yeah.
Ron Paul come out here.
It's gotta cost a lot of money.
You got to get him out here.
So I'm not criticizing
No, and neither am I.
Anarchapulco. I'm just saying this is a very difficult problem to solve.
Yeah.
Because if there's gonna definitely be people, no matter how we explain anarchy, who are going to say that's crazy. I want
course.
government. We need cops to enforce. If somebody goes into that Ron Paul dinner and starts eating a steak and slapping Ron Paul around, we want somebody to be able to throw that guy out. And
Yes.
I personally don't want to do that.
Right.
So how do we, in a world of anarchy, how does something? And maybe these aren't. This is more of a question for Jeff, because you're not
For sure.
necessarily here supporting anarchy.
No.
You're here promoting the octopus of global control. And
But I
talking
am
about-
a friend of Jeff's, and I believe in what he's doing, and I think that he's on the right track here. And there will be some issues that come up that will need to get sorted out, and there will be, I think that everyone will look back on this years from now and say, oh well, we could have done some things differently, and that's okay. But that happens in every line of work. But I think they're definitely on the right track here. They've got some great bands. They've got some amazing speakers. You've
Yeah.
got people that have been doing this for a long, long time, like Ron Paul, like G. Edward Griffin, like David Icke. They come in and bring you decades of experience. And then you've got some newer people that are just sort of getting into this. And so it's a nice blend. I mean, I personally expected, this is my first year, I expected to see I expected to be like the parking lot at a Grateful Dead concert, to be honest with you. Patchouli and dreadlocks and all that.
grilled cheese
and the
sandwiches.
the little sticks, those things.
devil sticks and,
all
and
the
acid doses.
yeah, exactly. Those and nitrous balloons. I haven't seen any of that stuff.
You're right. It's been remarkably calm and organized for
It's
an
been-
anarchy event.
It's been white guys and black guys, and listen.
Women.
I went through. I did the ayahuasca session Tuesday night. It was 40 people from early 20s to late 60s,
Wow.
men and women. Everyone's in there. I mean, it was a great batch of people. So it's an interesting mix. Look, and if everything goes wrong, you're still in Acapulco.
Yeah.
You're still out in the sun. You got the beach, you got the pools, and there's all that going on. It's a beautiful resort. It's been a great event, and I'll be back. I mean, I'll be back next year because these are my people. These are the type of people that I want to associate with, because it's guys and girls with great ideas, working to make them a little bit better, get some input from other people. It's been nice to see the crowds too for these speeches. We've got everybody's got their little schedule. They're flipping through it. Like today, we'll go see Sean Stone, then we'll see Benny Wills from Joy Camp, then we'll see Ole Damagard. Where are you going to see that? Where are you going to? Unless you're on YouTube, of course, you can just watch these videos. But where are you going to see that while you can?
You get
sit
to
in front row
interact
and-
with these guys and talk to them, and
They're approachable too.
Yeah.
Afterwards, you see them walking around and say, "Hey, that was a great talk you gave. Oh, that was fantastic." Or I didn't know anything about that, and you opened my eyes to some of these things. So I can understand why the size of the convention has doubled every year.
It's doubled?
It's doubled every year.
Wow.
Yeah, it started off with like 200 people, and then it just goes
Oh,
and goes.
there's
and goes.
thousands
Now
in
it's 3,000 here.
Wow.
Yeah, for this next year,
5, 6. who
we
knows?
might need 2 hotels.
So David Icke spoke a lot about perception
Yes.
being reality, how our visual sense and our auditory sense and just every human sense is limited in scope, and there are things that could be happening around us that we just lack the senses to
Yes.
perceive. Did ayahuasca change your perception? Did it change your reality?
It can't help but change your reality. So the story of it is that in the Amazon they found 2 different plants. One plant that has I forget the technical name for it. Somebody can find that, but it has DMT in the roots, and then another plant that you brew with it, and that has an MAOI inhibitor, so it allows the DMT to not get deactivated it when it goes through your stomach. So the fact that there are 2 plants out of 125,000 different species of plants in the Amazon, that when you mix them together, brew them for 3 days, makes this disgusting sludge that Graham Hancock described as a taste similar to a pile of dirty socks, battery acid with a hint of chocolate. That when you drink it, you go to another dimension for 5 or 6 hours, is amazing. And when they asked the shamans, how did you figure this out? Their response was, the plants told us.
Wow.
And as crazy as that sounds, after you do that, it somehow makes sense. You think, well, yeah, that's how it probably happened. It's mathematically almost impossible to have those 2, to brew those 2 things, to find those 2 plants out of 125,000 that'll make it work. And so you talk about, yes, it changes your perception. And David, I talked about how, if what we base reality on is what we can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, we are severely limiting ourselves. Our visible light spectrum is 0.005% of what is out there. So to say that, and I have that quote in the book from somebody, and I can't remember who it was, but they say if we base our lives on what we can see, if we only base our lives on what we can see, or I'll believe it when I see it,
right,
then we're severely limiting ourselves, and that's true. So it's changing your perception, and part of it might be not even in a psychedelic sense, but just changing your perception about the media. As a prime example, the media, you make one change from the media is my friend to the media is not my friend, and that changes your entire world.
Right.
Oh my God, really? The media is not my friend? Well, why would I think that? Well, I would think that because of all of the examples of how they're lying to us, deplatforming people. I've used this example before with you, where Laura Loomer stands up at the press conference in Las Vegas and says,
Changed the whole investigation.
I have information that directly contradicts the dates that he came to the hotel by 3 days. Now, any normal human being, any real investigator, instead of Sheriff Lombardo,
Let me see that.
maniac, would say, come talk to me after this.
Yes.
I want to get that.
Yeah. He said, kicking her out.
Get out.
Right.
Okay, so that's all right. So that doesn't change your perception on maybe not police in
Isn't
general.
it amazing that people something must be wrong with Laura? Is
Yeah,
what they think.
how dare she? How
Right.
dare she come in here and be disrespectful to the victims' families? What? How is that disrespectful to the victim? If a violent crime happened to my family, I would want to know what really happened. I wouldn't want to hide behind the official story and say anything contrary to the official story is disrespectful to me. How dare you say it? I would have the exact opposite response. I would want to know whatever. And if Sheriff Lombardo was lying to me about it, then I would want that bastard in prison.
Oh yeah.
And it wouldn't be okay. I wouldn't turn against Laura and say, "How dare you come in here?" That's crazy. But that's
It's
a
the way
lifetime
it
of
is.
programming,
Yeah.
and that is people that want. That's people that still believe that the state is on their side. I think that the people at this event have come to the realization over time that maybe the state and the people do not want the same thing.
Yeah.
And they're watching cops pull drivers out of their cars and beat them. And they showed a video yesterday of Eric Garner getting choked out by the cops and murdered on the sidewalk. And, it's not to say that this is an anti-cop convention, because it's certainly not. It's just, be careful with your authority, be careful with your gang tactics that the police use, because you are harming people without knowing the full story. Eric Garner didn't get a trial. He got choked out and killed on the sidewalk for selling cigarettes.
Right? Yeah,
Which, by the way, 10 feet away, they're selling cigarettes in that store.
Exactly.
So what, because he wasn't paying a tax on it? I'd say one of the key components of this event is that they are not fans of taxation.
Right.
They don't like it. In part, not just because it's taking your money away from you. It would be one thing if the taxation was if that money was being used for helping
Roads
people,
and
roads
people,
and medicine and all that stuff. But instead, that's not what's happening. That money is, in part, not all of it, is going to Lockheed Martin to pay for bombs that they drop on brown people and murder them. And then if you say anything about that, then you're a conspiracy theorist. And it's just madness. And so I think that a lot of people are waking up to this to the nonsense. And like anything, whatever issue first captures your attention, you get into it. If it's 9/11 or if it's Las Vegas or if it's the Clinton Foundation. If you say, well, this is a lie, if this is a lie, what else is a lie? And that starts the process. And so what you see, the people that are here are all, the dominoes have fallen for them.
Yeah.
They might, some of them are early on, some of them, all their dominoes have fallen over, and they are fully awake about what's going on. So it's interesting to get these people together and have a chance to sort of network and talk about some of the important issues that are going on.
And along the lines of what you're saying right now, you and I are just about the same age. So, we sort of grew up at a time where Ronald Reagan was telling us that, hey, go watch Rambo movies, everything's great, Russia's the evil empire.
Oh, yeah.
The wall fell. But like our parents'
Say no
generation.
to drugs.
Right. our parents' generation, for most people, the most significant lie is the JFK assassination. And then now it seems like we're just getting pepper bombed, as David Icke would say, where we've got 9/11 and we've got Vegas and we've got, it just seems like every week there's another thing happening that is so far from being remotely true. Do you think more people are waking up now, Charlie?
Yeah, and I do. I think more people are waking up, but at the same time, there's something else also that's happening that's really negative, and that is desensitization of towards these events. It's like, oh, another shooting. Oh, another this. Oh, another that. And they're getting us to the point where we don't.
You don't react.
We don't react as much.
Remember
Vegas should be in the news still.
Yeah.
It should still be talked about. I lived in Las Vegas for 9 years. I still work there. I go back and forth. I'm there all the time. It's not discussed.
No.
That shooting is not discussed. It is. They pretend like it didn't happen there. Now, and part of that is because I think the powers that be don't want to remind people about it because it's such a flawed event with so many holes and so many questions that the last thing they want is for people to dig into that. They want you fearful and they want you worried, but that one, for whatever reason, they have failed to, or they've decided not to keep pushing that narrative. And I think the reason is because they get a C- for that event. It just wasn't very well done.
Worst staged event.
One of the worst ones. And I'm not saying that people didn't die. What I'm saying is that the story behind it.
Right. Sorry. Let me rephrase. Not a staged event, but a false flag. We're blaming Stephen Paddock for something that so much evidence shows.
Right.
There's no way it was one guy shooting out the window. You've just caused me to remember that when the Columbine, Colorado high school shooting took place. I forget the name. Was it Columbine High School?
Columbine High School, yeah.
I remember I actually was in Vegas for maybe CES or NAB or some convention, and I had just landed, and I saw that news, I remember, on a television in a hotel room, and I just remember being so impacted by that. Like, that is brutal.
It was brutal.
And now it's like 2 a week and you're like, oh, another shooting. So this desensitization, it absolutely works.
Yeah, it does. And it's not by accident. And I talk about things like the Tavistock Institute in the book. And Tavistock Institute is a social engineering firm or organization in the UK that worked with a form of mind control through media, not necessarily the MK Ultra torture mind control, but more of the how do we control society through television, a lot like Operation Mockingbird.
Music, movies.
Yeah, music, movies, things like that. And the architects that were involved in Tavistock Institute are the same architects that were involved in an organization called the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome put out a paper in 1971 saying that they had decided that the threat of global warming and climate change would fit the bill as the event that they would use in order to create a carbon tax, and the carbon tax would be used to fund the one world government. So when everybody is talking about global warming these days, I think what and they're up in arms about global warming, and I don't mean the media, but I mean the people. I think what they really mean is they're up in arms about pollution, which is real.
Yes.
And pollution is a real thing. But they have conflated the two. They've taken pollution, global warming, and tied that to pollution, named it that.
Well, and they're blaming carbon dioxide,
which is
That's
crazy.
The crazy
I'm no
part.
scientist, but if we didn't have carbon dioxide,
Plants-
we wouldn't be here.
Right.
So
Well, but then the people who disagree with what we're saying was, oh, but there's too much carbon dioxide.
Mm-hmm.
I get emails from farmers and people who say, where did this idea come from? This is absolutely absurd.
came from the Club of Rome. It came from the Club of Rome in 1971, and the Club of Rome was founded by David Rockefeller and Alexander King. And Alexander King is like the David Rockefeller of Britain. He's involved in all of these things. The Committee of 300. He's a
Trilateral.
globalist scumbag. Like he's died. But you see these guys, these wealthy people that want to control the world, and one of the ways that they do it is through these organizations. So you've got Trilateral Commission and Council on Foreign Relations and Bilderberg and Club of Rome and Tavistock and all of these organizations. Aspen Institute. Yeah, they get together and they come up with these ideas. And the idea of global warming didn't just sprout organically. It was created by David Rockefeller and Alexander King.
Yeah.
And so if we have not learned anything, I mean, if David Rockefeller is involved in something, it's a scam. Or it's not for your benefit.
Well, and let's talk about that, because at the top of the conversation here, you said that banking is a scam, and Donald Trump has said that climate change is a hoax, and it's a real condensing of ideas that obviously you've got a deep understanding of this. You wrote the book, The Octopus of Global Control. You've studied all this stuff. So I want to elaborate on this. It's a one-word explanation of something big. I think a lot of people still don't realize that Al Gore was one of the two founders of the Chicago Climate Exchange, which was basically commoditizing these carbon credits, an artificial thing that was just made up, and then they wanted to convince everyone that creating carbon dioxide was something that we needed to suppress or we're all going to die. And if you challenge that, you're a climate denier. This is science.
Science is settled.
Yeah.
First of all,
no such thing as settled science.
Science is never settled.
That comes from lawyers and the concept of settled law.
Right. So when somebody tells you that the science is settled,
That's an idiot.
That's an indicator that the science is most definitely not settled, because they don't want you talking about it any further. They drop that on you. Climate change denier. That's the big one.
Well, that's the new conspiracy
theorist. Exactly. Well, there's more to it. Al Gore should have won the election in 2000.
Well,
it was stolen from him by the Bush family.
Yeah.
But an arrangement allegedly was made. I can't prove that an arrangement was made. But that was when he started down this path of the global warming thing, an inconvenient truth and all of that. Al Gore is no hero.
No.
Okay. He is a globalist scumbag like the rest of them. He's just purported to, make himself out to be this green guy who's out saving the planet as he flies around in a private jet. Okay,
he's making money from that Chicago Climate Exchange,
of course
which went under and became.
It's funny. I'd love to know how you can make $1 billion as a climate scientist. I mean, Al Gore seems to have done it. So I mean,
Richard Sandor.
It's a scam. It's a scam. Now, to say, when Trump says global warming's a hoax, you can't just leave it at that, because when you do that, then you get a massive percentage of the population that say, "How dare you? This is my planet." And there's certainly.
But he seems to love that, getting everybody.
Oh, he doesn't
That's
care.
why he's tweeting.
Yeah.
That statement is the verbal equivalent of a tweet that he just puts out
just
there.
drops that and then just walks away from it and let everybody else.
I kind of love that about him.
I'll tell you what, the one thing, I'm not a huge Trump fan, but the one thing I do like about him is how absolutely aggravated he makes the mainstream media and Congress. They hate him, and of course I don't like Congress, so to watch them just lose their minds is hilarious to me, and I think it's fantastic. But with the climate change, it's polarizing, because people, how dare you say that? My children, my grandchildren have to grow up on this planet. You're polluting. That's true. We're polluting this planet. We're treating this planet like we have another one to go to. And
But they don't talk about sulfur monoxide. They don't talk,
they don't talk about
mercury.
garbage. They don't talk about the trash patch that's floating around the Pacific Ocean. They don't talk
carbon
about any of that.
dioxide.
It's carbon dioxide. And why is that? Because they can tax it. And what they want to do to you is they want to make it so that you get tagged with a number of your output of carbon dioxide, how much you're contributing to this problem. And whatever you're contributing to the problem, they're going to tax you that. And where's that tax money going to go? It's going to go into the IMF and the World Bank. And what are the IMF and World Bank? They're a global money laundering organization for the New World Order. They are the ones that it's the funding mechanism for them. This isn't my theory. This is David Rockefeller and Alexander King talking about this is the plan. And that's part of why I put the book together with these quotes, because I sat down at a Thanksgiving dinner talking about 9/11, and when the table turned on me and said, "What are you, a structural engineer? What do you know about the temperature at which steel melts?" And I felt like,
Well, it's just a fact, isn't it?
I don't have this information, but if you heard it from Richard Gage and Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and you've got 3,000 of them saying it's a mathematical impossibility for it to melt, would that change your mind? Would it matter if David Rockefeller was talking to Bilderberg about the plan, thanking the media for keeping things quiet? We would never be able to institute the New World Order without your agreement for silence. Would that change your feeling about whether... That's a quote. Oh yeah, it's in there from 1991 in Germany at Bilderberg when he was at that conference. So it's like,
so that's Rockefeller.
That's
Everybody's always
Rockefeller.
talking about the Rothschilds, but we
Well,
seem
they're
to
bad.
hear a lot less about the Rockefellers.
the Rockefellers are as bad, if not worse. And they've spread out. And so one of the things is that as this, the intelligence of the octopus is that part of their trick for staying alive is to camouflage themselves. And to get out of the way when they need to. And so the Rockefeller, they set up these NGOs and they set up these organizations that are do-gooder organizations, but they're really not doing a good thing. They're out there, and the Rockefeller Foundation is, hey, we've donated all this money to education. Okay, well, the Clinton Foundation has a bunch of money for education as well.
Well, but the education is just putting everybody in a row and training them to respond to a bell, like
to a stimulus,
dog
right, exactly. Yeah, so there's a lot of this going on. So the organizations that, what I learned, and it took a while, and it was hard to come to this understanding, is that a lot of these organizations that purport to be helping humanity are just front groups, and they're spending this much of their budget on helping humanity in a form of window dressing, while the rest of it is this organization that is actively working against the best interests of the people, and it's got to stop. And part of that is we're waking up to this, and slowly but surely. But I think everybody is starting to understand that the Rothschilds are up to no good, and the Rockefellers are starting to figure that out. Well, guess who's the new version of the Rockefellers?
Clintons.
The Clintons.
Yeah.
They are. This is what they've taken, that blue
And Soros.
and Adelson and all these guys, and we look at the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and go, what a bunch of scumbags. They look at them and go, oh, let me take some notes on how this is done.
Well, they're writing them emails like, oh, I'm so sorry. What was Hillary sending to Linda Rothschild?
Yeah. Who, by the way, you've got to find the picture, maybe you can edit it in, of Linda Rothschild standing in front of this large painting in one of her castles.
David Brock.
It's a big black demon that is eating a child.
Whoa.
Yeah, and she's smiling like.
Oh, is that is it Gauguin who has Saturn consuming his children? That's
maybe. It sounds like something they would be.
Oh, no, it's Goya. It's Goya, I think, that painted
Yeah,
that.
I've got that picture. I'll send it to you.
It's a crazy. I remember.
It's not the type of painting you would have hanging in your house if you were a member of the human race. If you were just a decent human being, people would look at it and go, hey, what's with the baby getting eaten and the blood all over the place from that satanic-looking thing? Lynn's like, it's my favorite piece. Wow. I love it. Yeah. So anyway, it's dark. My point is that coming to terms with all of these things is like, oh my God, I don't know if I can take this. Like, I just want to go watch the Jetsons, and just space out for a while and not think about it. And that's tempting and it's understandable.
But that's part of the role of the media, right? It's like the news is going to overwhelm you with like sadness and violence, and you don't know who to trust. And then
so you
just
deserve a
turn
break
on
today.
The Super
Go to
Bowl,
McDonald's.
McDonald's, the Super Bowl, the
Superb Owl,
Superb Owl, whatever kind of subliminal programming in a movie or a music video.
Yeah, and I hate to be all doom and gloom about it, but the good news is, and there is good news, the good news is that it's not too late. We can turn this thing around. We can wake up to this. We can acknowledge that that there are some dark forces working against us. And I'm not a religious person, so I don't go to that. You're the devil, but there are a lot of people that are Luciferians, and Satanists, and there is a difference between the two, and I don't pretend to know the finer details of it, but those people are out there and they exist, and surprisingly, they're in high positions of power.
Yeah.
There is a club, and it's the George Carlin. There's a big club, and you ain't in it. But frankly, you don't want to be in it.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in this club. This club is no bueno, and they're up to, they've been up to no good for a long, long time, and unfortunately. It's a case study in how the few can control the many. It's fascinating. It's evil, but it's fascinating. You have got to give them credit for having a plan. Hundreds of years, over multi-generational plans.
Yeah.
A lot of these people that are working on behalf of the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Soros, Clintons, and all these people, they won't ever see the final outcome of the plan in their lifetime. They won't be there, but they're dedicated to it still. They're going to do their part up until the point where they die, and then it'll be on to someone else. And it's a plan that is it's a long game, and they're playing it. So you've got to respect their ability to commit to it and do that. Their tactics are absolutely horrible, and as you've done lots of work with Ola, you can see their handiwork in the form of false flags everywhere. And if people think, this is all just make believe and everything, watch some of these false flags. It got to the point where you can call them before they happen.
Ole did like 15 in a row.
Yeah, you can point out aspects of this, and I did it with the San Bernardino shooting. The minute it happened, I happened to be at my house. My mom had come over. We turned on the news. Boom! San Bernardino shooting happens. I didn't know anything. She didn't. We just turned it on, and I said, "I'm going to tell you 5 things that are going to happen in this. And if I tell you these 5 things, and they happen, will you believe me that this is a staged event or a manufactured event?" All 5 of them happened. And it's not that I'm some psychic communicating with spirits, getting the information. It's that I know what the plan is. The plan is obvious. It's demonize groups of people, create chaos, create fear, and when you
problem, reaction, solution.
Something, of course, David Icke has gone into.
Right. How does your family react? I mean, you wrote the book, The Octopus of Global Control.
Yeah.
Do they? What's the input?
Yeah. So the response. So I wrote the book in secret, total silence. Didn't tell anybody I was writing it.
Mom, wife, nobody.
Nope. The day the first shipment came, I had gotten the mail. I thought, it's not in the mail today. I went out, ran some errands. Well, FedEx delivered later, after the mail. Well, I was not there. My wife was there. Hey, there's a big box. She opens it up, finds the book, throws me out of the house for 2 days. Says, "Get out." And I said, "Look, I'm not cheating on you. I don't have a secret family in Utah. I just wrote a book. I had to write a book." And she didn't appreciate the secrecy or the emotional cheating on it.
Oh, really?
The fact that I had invested all that time doing it. And my point to her and to others was that, I kept it quiet for a couple of reasons, but I didn't know if I would finish it. I didn't know if it would be any good. I didn't know if I would want to go down that path. And as I wrote a little bit, I wound up writing more and more and more, putting it together. I felt like I had to do it. I had guilt. I had guilt about having this information or coming across this information and doing nothing with it. I felt like if I could put it out there and some people could find the information and then they would come to understand it and maybe they would tell more people, at least from a soul perspective, I would feel like I have done something to be involved in this. I don't have a podcast. I don't have the ability to reach your 80,000 subscribers. But I figured I could do a book. I could write it. I could make it funny. I mean, it's considering how dark the topics are. I got to say, it's a pretty funny book. I mean, I had to put that in there, or else you'd be jumping off the balcony.
Well, it's also, that's your natural personality, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So so the response has been, aside from get out of the house for 2 days, the response has been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I've been pleased with that. And
has your family read the book?
Yes.
And what'd they say after?
They're still processing it.
Yeah.
Still
takes a while.
Takes a while.
Particularly for the parents. Our parents
Some
are
of it-
probably around the same age, and
Yeah.
they've been really indoctrinated through the 50s and really the heyday of America where everything was great, and they've got their lives, their family, their house. They don't want to hear about any of this
They
stuff.
don't. And a lot of it, I think there's also a philosophy or an opinion of, what am I going to do about it?
Right. Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I need this. Okay, great. So there's all these problems. What am I going to do? Am I going to go out there and put the Rockefellers in prison? No. So now what? Well, I think that's a sort of a cop-out. I feel like maybe you can't do everything about it. You aren't going to go fix it all. But you can do something. I spoke about it. I had a couple hundred people listening, talking about things like this. Those people might tell some other people.
Right.
The book has been selling very well. I've been very pleased with that, and so that will maybe inspire somebody else who isn't a writer, but maybe they say, I'm going to start a radio show, or I'm going to talk about this I'm going to do a book report on this, or I'm going to do something.
Make a video and put it on YouTube.
Make a video, put it up. Yeah, for sure. So there's always something we can do. I'm not.
That inspired me too for a long time. What are you going to do about it? And I said, what am I going to do?
You're great at film.
Well,
you're great at talking.
Create a YouTube channel.
You're great
and
at
crowdsource the truth.
taking content from people. You're great at interviewing people. You got Charles come. I'll tell you what. If the Clinton Foundation goes down and those maniacs get put in prison, you and Charles deserve a ton of credit for it. I'm not kidding.
Charles mostly.
I'm not kidding, because nobody has hit them as hard as the two of you, and I think you deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
And I know what I'm getting you for the holidays: a bulletproof vest.
Yeah, well, I might need that. It's almost like, Charles is there. I went with Quinn Michaels to Mount Rushmore. Mm-hmm. And they tell you there about how they literally had guys hanging from ropes chiseling the mountain. And it is so impressive to see. I don't know if you've been there, but
I haven't.
I was like, but when I stood there and saw it, I was like, that is super impressive.
Do they have room for Charles's face?
Well, I was going to say, we could put Trump right next to Abraham Lincoln if he puts him in jail.
Yeah.
But Charles is like the guy chiseling on the mountain, and he's just chipping away piece by piece.
You pull back, and then before long, he's created the picture that you can that is undeniable.
Yeah.
But early on, that probably said to the guys working on that mountain, it just looks like a mountain. It just looks like a bunch of
sure
rubbish.
A million people told him, you're never going to be able to do that.
Of course, you're never going to be able to. It's too big of a task.
Yeah.
And is it your job? And who cares? And what's the point? And we can take a picture of these guys. And why do we have to do it in the mountains? And why do we have to? You do it because it matters.
Well, and the alternative is so
dark.
Yeah,
for sure. And maybe we could create. There'll be a new Mount Rushmore. It'll be a Mount Rushmore of criminals, and it'll be the Clintons, and then you can put their faces on it with bars right in front of them.
That's a good idea. I like that.
We can get into that, but yeah, you never know who's going to. You never know who's going to hear what you're talking about and then take it to the next level.
Right.
David Icke, did a 4-hour presentation, and he takes a lot of heat for the reptilian stuff, and that's fine. And he's a big boy; he can handle himself. But there's so much of what he's been saying over the last 20 years that sounded crazy early on, only to come and find that he talked find that it was true. And so if you look back and you say, well, if I thought you were crazy here, and now I found out that it's true about the rampant pedophilia inside the monarchy, and how that has been used as a mechanism of control for these politicians, you hear that and you think, all right, well, I thought you were crazy early on. It turns out you're right about these things. What else did I think you were crazy about? What else are we going to discover that you're right about? And so, like I said, with the reptilian stuff, people go, oh, okay, that is, as you say, a bridge too far.
Yeah.
But what if it is just the same? What if we're looking at that, feeling the same way people thought 20 years ago about when he was talking about the royal family? Oh, Prince Charles, they're not pedophiles. They're not out there, the Queen disappearing with those 10 kids in Canada and then them never being spotted again from that Aboriginal boarding school. Oh, that's just folklore. Really? That's true.
Wow.
That's true, and if that's true, what else is true? And so
And you talk about all of this in the Octopus.
I talk about all of this, and I talk about, and so with David Icke, after 20 years of him doing the talks, and he talked about how when he started, people would walk down the street point and laugh at him, or women with kids would cross the street so they didn't have to walk by him. And my question to him is, who's laughing now? He's selling out Wembley. He's got 3,000 people at Anarchapulco here to see him talk about this. Yeah. He's written 16 books.
Wow.
He's talking about all of these things. He's being proven right for many of the concepts that he's brought out. And so who's going to take it the next step? So I wrote a book, got another one in the works, and then, so who's going to read my book 10 years from now, start their own and take it the next step,
right.
And they may be the ones that actually put the nail in the coffin for some of these maniacs.
Can we talk a bit about the next book, or is it too soon?
It's too soon right now. But when I get it out, I'll be back and we'll be
but
chatting
the book,
about
of course, is The Octopus of Global Control. What's the best way for people to get the book, Charlie?
Probably Amazon or Barnes & Noble. They can come to my website and you can get the digital version from me for sure.
theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com.
Yes.
And I would recommend Barnes & Noble. I mean, I guess it's a huge corporation as well, but we'll send them to one that is not known to be a CIA controlled.
I have to agree with you there for sure. I don't know how much of the proceeds, a $25 book actually makes its way into the pocket of Jeff Bezos, but I'm sure some of it does.
Right.
So if we can find a way to not do that, then that's certainly fine with me. I'm going to lose no sleep over that. But yeah, you know what? Actually, I will say this about the book, and that is, for those that understand this, there will be aspects of it that are redundant. Right. But for the people in your life that don't get it, that are on the fence, it's an encyclopedia. It is an encyclopedia, and there'll be one topic in here that will catch their attention. That someone will say, "I care about Uncle Bob died in Vietnam, and now I read that the Gulf of Tonkin incident, there was no Vietnamese boat that they were shooting. That Lyndon Johnson is on record saying, I don't care if they're shooting at whales."
Wow.
And you realize that Vietnam was started over a lie, and all these almost 60,000 Americans died, millions of Vietnamese, Cambodians, Laotians died because of that, destroyed places, landmines everywhere, all of this destruction over a lie. And so when you find out, well, if that's a lie, what else is a lie? And that might lead you to something else.
Vietnam ushered in the petrodollar because it was the depletion of the U.S. Treasury, that we ran out of money and went off the gold standard, and that triggered all the events that we're seeing now.
Yeah. And we can't do anything about that except be educated on it. But maybe by being educated about all these things, we'll prevent the next Vietnam from happening, because so many of us will say we're not doing that. And I think we're seeing that right now, where as we stand on the edge of Venezuela. And I said this about 8 months ago on an interview I did with Sam Tripoli. I said, you watch, Venezuela's next. Does Venezuela cause a problem to you, or you have a problem? No. I don't have a problem with them. But it's coming, because they've got somebody in there that we don't like, and they've got a ton of oil, and that's a recipe for disaster. Just look at Iran. We've done this before. But Russia's meddling in the election. We've got to get rid of Russia meddling in the election as we simultaneously meddle in everybody else's election. It's just the hypocrisy of it all is just staggering, and it's infuriating. And I have done enough screaming at the moon about how dare these maniacs try and do this, and that was part of this. Realization when it came time to write the book. It was that, I've been yelling I've just been yelling at myself like a lunatic about these topics, and maybe it's time to focus that and put that on paper and get that out to people so that I feel like I've done something. I feel like I have, but there's still a lot more to do.
Well, the book is The Octopus of Global Control. The website is theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com. Charlie, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and now that we've met face to face, it's a pleasure to get to know you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for being with me
Thank
here,
you.
Sunday with Charlie, and thanks to everybody for watching. We'll see you soon.